Picture this. A woman being wheeled onto a Hollywood set in a wheelchair, unable to walk the distance on her own. She needs someone to help her stand. She needs someone to guide her every step. And yet, she shows up anyway. That woman is Christina Applegate, one of the most beloved actresses in American television history. And what she has finally chosen to say about Ed O'Neill, her TV father, her real-life protector, and the man who stood beside her through nearly 4 decades of triumphs, losses, and one life-altering diagnosis, is something the world has been waiting to hear. This is not just a story about a TV show. This is not just nostalgia for the family that made America laugh every week. This is a story about a bond so deep, so quietly powerful, that even people who worked alongside them every single day never fully understood what was really happening. Until now. When Christina Applegate walked onto the set of Married with Children in 1987, she was 15 years old. 15. She was barely old enough to drive a car, and here she was, stepping into the most controversial sitcom on American television. The show was unlike anything that had aired before it. Married with Children did not present a polished, idealized American family. It presented the Bundys, a loud, broke, dysfunctional, and deeply funny household in Chicago. Al Bundy, the put-upon shoe salesman played by Ed O'Neill, was the unapologetic patriarch. And Kelly Bundy, his teenage daughter, was written as a blonde bombshell with more beauty than brain cells, a character deliberately designed to push boundaries and turn heads. For a 15-year-old girl, that role was a lot to carry. The jokes about Kelly were suggestive. The outfits were revealing. The attention from fans and media was intense, often inappropriate and relentless. Young actresses in Hollywood have historically struggled under exactly these kinds of conditions. The industry has a well-documented and shameful history of exploiting young women who are thrust into adult situations before they have the tools to protect themselves. But Christina had something that many young actresses in her position did not have. She had Ed O'Neill. Ed was in his early 40s when the show began. He had come up through theater, through the hard work of building a career the honest way, through years of struggle before his big break. He understood Hollywood. He understood what it could do to people who were not prepared for it. And from the very beginning of their time working together, he made a choice that nobody required him to make. He chose to look out for the teenager standing next to him on that stage. Cast and crew members who worked on Married with Children have shared stories over the years about observing this dynamic. They would watch Ed pull Christina aside between takes just to check in on her. They would see him position himself near her during difficult scenes. They would notice him quietly redirecting conversations that were heading in inappropriate directions whenever Christina was nearby. This was not acting. This was not for the cameras. This was a grown man in a ruthless industry choosing, day after day, to be genuinely decent. Ed would drive Christina home after late-night shoots because he did not want her traveling alone. He would call her mother to offer reassurance that her daughter was being cared for. And when producers pushed for things that made Christina uncomfortable, situations that crossed lines no teenager should be asked to cross, Ed pushed back. He stood between her and the pressures of the industry with a quiet, unwavering consistency that she has described as genuinely changing her life. Christina has spoken about this in interviews that many fans have never seen. She has described Ed as a mentor in the truest sense of the word. Not someone who talked about mentorship, but someone who lived it every single day without asking for recognition or credit. In 1989, a woman named Terry Ricalta from Michigan watched an episode of Married with Children, called her Cups Runneth Over, and decided that what she had seen was so offensive, so morally unacceptable, that she would dedicate herself to having the show removed from television entirely. She launched a boycott campaign that was, by any measure, impressively organized. She contacted major advertisers directly. She wrote letters. She appeared on news programs. She used the media attention skillfully, and her campaign worked, at least at first. Coca-Cola pulled their advertising. McDonald's withdrew their support. Dozens of other major companies followed, spooked by the controversy. Network executives were suddenly in emergency meetings, having very serious conversations about whether Married with Children should continue at all. For Christina Applegate, who was 17 years old, this was terrifying. This show was her entire career. Every bit of work she had done, every audition, every early morning call time, every awkward teenage year spent learning her craft. All of it was wrapped up in Married with Children. And now it looked like it could disappear overnight because one woman in Michigan had decided she did not like what she saw on television. Once again, it was Ed O'Neill who refused to let fear take over. During that period of crisis, Ed personally sat down with Christina and with David Faustino, who played her brother Bud, and told them something important. He told them that no matter what happened, whether the show survived or whether it did not, they had created something real, something worth being proud of. He reminded them that the value of what they had built together did not depend on whether a network decided to keep airing it. He also did something else, something that has rarely been discussed publicly. He went to the press himself. He gave interviews. He made sure that every media conversation about the boycott included someone speaking up for the people who worked on the show, especially the young people. He refused to allow Christina and David to become collateral damage in someone else's culture war. And then something remarkable happened. The boycott backfired. All the controversy, all the headlines, all the outrage. It made people curious about this show they had either never watched or never paid much attention to. Ratings went up dramatically. The campaign that was designed to destroy Married with Children ended up turning it into a phenomenon. But here is what Christina has said she actually remembers from that frightening period. Not the ratings surge, not the victory. What she remembers is Ed standing next to her when everything felt like it was collapsing. She remembers him being calm and steady when everyone around them was panicking. She remembers him showing her, by example, what it looks like to face a crisis with grace. That lesson stayed with her for the rest of her life. Married with Children ran for 11 seasons. 11 years. Christina Applegate was 15 years old when it started and 26 when it ended. Those are not just numbers. Those are the years when a human being builds their entire sense of self. Those are the years that determine who you become. Over the course of that run, the relationship between Christina and Ed evolved in ways that neither of them could have predicted. In the early seasons, it was clearly a mentor and student dynamic. Ed had the experience. Christina had the raw talent. He guided. She absorbed. But somewhere along the way, season by season, episode by episode, the balance shifted. Christina found her voice. She became more confident in her instincts, more willing to bring ideas to the room, more capable of holding her own in a creative conversation with some of the most experienced people in the industry. Ed watched this transformation with undisguised pride. The teenager he had taken under his wing was becoming a powerhouse. By the final seasons of the show, Christina was not following anyone's lead. She was contributing to the creative process in ways that surprised even the most seasoned members of the production team. She was improvising with confidence. She was elevating scenes. She was, by any objective measure, one of the most genuinely skilled comic performers on television. And Ed could not have been prouder. One of the hidden stories that has emerged over the years involves the way Ed used improvisation as a teaching tool. Married with Children gave its cast more creative freedom than most sitcoms of its era. The writers provided scripts, but the performers were encouraged to find their own truth in the material. Ed, whose background in theater had made him a gifted improviser, used this freedom to push Christina in ways that made her better. He would change his line delivery mid-scene to catch her off guard. He would shift the emotional register of a moment to test her ability to adapt. He would throw her curveballs that forced her to react authentically rather than mechanically. These were not tricks. They were lessons, wrapped in the language of comedy, delivered by someone who genuinely cared about the quality of her craft. When the show ended in 1997, not with a grand finale, not with a celebrated farewell, but simply because the network canceled it, and that was that, both of them struggled with the loss of what had been, for more than a decade, their entire daily world. One day, there was a set to go to, a family to spend time with, a routine built around people who knew them better than almost anyone. The next day, all of it was simply gone. The set was torn down, the cast scattered, and an era ended without ceremony. But the bond between Ed and Christina did not end. They stayed in touch. They called each other. They met for meals. Ed followed Christina's career with the attentiveness of someone who had a personal stake in her success, because he did. And Christina, through everything that came next, never stopped thinking of him as the person who had helped shape her into who she became. On August 10, 2021, Christina Applegate shared something on social media that stopped people in their tracks. She announced that she had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. The disease had been discovered while she was in the middle of filming the final season of her Netflix series Dead to Me, a show that had earned her some of the best reviews of her career and a new generation of devoted fans. And just like that, in the middle of what should have been a triumphant period, everything changed. Multiple sclerosis is a chronic, unpredictable disease of the central nervous system. It disrupts the communication between the brain and the body. It can affect mobility, balance, vision, and cognitive function. There is no cure. The symptoms can be managed with treatment, but the disease is permanent. It does not go away. It does not improve in a linear way. Some days are better than others. Some days are devastating. For Christina, the diagnosis required a complete restructuring of her life. She now uses a cane to walk. She has spoken candidly about experiencing cognitive fog, a frustrating symptom that affects memory and mental clarity. She has had to accept that her body has changed in ways that nothing in her career had prepared her for. The woman who spent a decade playing the most physically confident character on one of the most watched shows in America now faces daily challenges that most people never see. Getting to a set requires help. Walking requires assistance. The simple acts that healthy people do without thinking have become, for Christina, acts of genuine courage. But it was not only the physical reality that she had to come to terms with. Christina has spoken with remarkable honesty about the grief. Not just grief for her health, but grief for the version of her life she had expected to live. Grief for the future she had mapped out in her mind. Grief for the self she knew before the diagnosis. She has described what it is like to mourn while still being alive, to lose something enormous and still have to get up the next morning and keep going. And through all of it, Ed O'Neill reached out immediately. He did not send a brief text. He did not offer a performative public expression of support. He contacted Christina in a way that reflected nearly 4 decades of genuine friendship. He made sure she knew, unambiguously, that he was there for her. He expressed his love. He showed up the way he had always shown up, quietly, steadily, without needing anyone to see him do it. The entire Married with Children cast rallied around Christina in the wake of her announcement. Katie Segal, who played Peggy Bundy, has been particularly vocal in her support. David Faustino posted messages of love. Amanda Burse showed her solidarity. But Christina has been clear that it was Ed's response that reached her most deeply. He was still being her protector. Nearly 40 years later, across the enormous distance of different careers and separate lives, he was still the person who showed up when she needed someone to show up. In November 2022, Christina Applegate made her first major public appearance since revealing her MS diagnosis.